If you're like me and you're often having to record your own sound while also shooting, one of the trickiest parts of that process can be laving up your subjects. Where do I put that lav? How do I run the cables? How do I conceal the microphone? These are all really important questions to ask, and in this video, I'm going to walk you through some techniques that'll help solve those problems. In this video, I'm going to employ the help of my friend here and look at how you can mount your lavalier microphone on a variety of clothing options. We'll take a look at if they're just wearing a t-shirt, if they're wearing a collared shirt, if they're wearing a suit and tie, or if they're wearing a heavy winter coat. And all of these come with their own challenges in how to reduce that clothing sound. But in this video, I'm going to show you some of the techniques that I found to be quite useful. So when you're tasked with laving up your subject, whether this is for an interview or for a full verite scene, the first thing that you need to do that's really important is just explain to them what it is that you're going to do. Because mounting a lavalier microphone can be an invasive process. And so you don't want to just come in and start putting your hands all over somebody without explaining to them what it is that you're going to do first. Oftentimes this will just be, I'll need to drop this cable down the front of your shirt, and let them do that. And then from there, every step of the way, I'm now going to attach this microphone with some tape onto the collar of your shirt. If there's times that you need help with this, feel free to bring in an extra set of hands or let somebody else do it that they might feel more comfortable with. Because at the end of the day, the last thing you want to do is get off on the wrong foot with your subject before you've even pressed record on the camera. So first we're going to take a look at hiding a lavalier microphone on someone who's wearing a t-shirt, like my friend here. What we're going to do is we're going to ask them to drop the cable down the front of their shirt, and we'll drop that all the way down to where we can then pull it out from the bottom. All right. And on my microphone, I have this rubber casing that comes with my microphone. And in this case, it's a Senken COS 11. And these rubber casings are great when it comes to mounting a lav quick and easy on your subject. I use these all the time and almost exclusively when I'm doing this. And what I do is on the back, I just put a little piece of top stick. And top stick is a wig tape. And this will stick to clothing, this will stick to skin, it'll hold really well, it's sweat resistant. It's really a great thing to have in your sound kit and helps you affix your microphone anywhere that you need to put it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to then just take this off. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to affix this right up against the edge of that collar. Because one thing that'll happen is this little collar here, and most shirts are going to have that, are going to help kind of hide where that microphone is attached to the shirt. So we can just run that cable down and the mic's attached right here and you can't see it. What I am going to do is I'm just going to take a little piece of medical tape. This stuff will help you with strain relief and this stuff will hold really well. It's again sweat resistant, moisture resistant. But it's also not going to leave a residue on your subject's clothing, which is really important. And so I'm just going to take a piece of this tape and I'm just going to secure that mic cable down to the shirt. All right, so that is mounted right there. And by and large, that microphone is hidden. Now, something that's a little bit tricky especially when your subject is either wearing tight-fitting clothes or they happen to be as ripped as my friend here is if that shirt is tight, right? Then what you can do is you can sometimes start to see the line of the mic cable running down the shirt. And this is probably something that you don't want to have. It does kind of start to stand out. And so if this becomes a problem for you, then there's another option in how you can mount this. So instead of running the cable down the front of the shirt, what we're actually going to do is we're going to run it down the back of the shirt. What's really nice about any of these lavalier microphones is they are omnidirectional, so they don't have to be pointed up towards where the voice is coming from. They can be mounted in any particular angle. And so what I'm going to do is I'm actually now going to take this and I'm just going to mount it sideways, again, right under the lip of that collar, like this. And then I'm just going to take some of my medical tape and I'm going to run this cable just around, again, right along this collar line. And I'm going to tape it down like so. Another piece of tape. Right up here. And then we can now take this extra line and we can drop it down the back of their shirt. So now what you're going to do is you're not going to be able to see any cables running down the front of their shirt. If that shirt is tight, this way it's just coming up along the collar and it's going to drop back down. And the mic is still placed in the exact same position, just to its side. But again, because it's omnidirectional, it's not going to change the pickup pattern at all of the sound or the quality of their voice. And so these are two great ways to mount a lav on someone who's wearing a t-shirt. Now we're going to take a look at mounting a lavalier microphone when someone's wearing a collared shirt. And in this setup, we're going to be using the same rubber casing that comes with the COS 11 mic. And so we're going to start by asking the subject to just drop this wire down the front of their shirt. We can then just pull that slack out, like so. All right, so now that we've got the wire dropped down through the front of their shirt, there's a few different places of where you can mount this lav. One option is you can put it just right here on the shirt on either side. The other option is you can sandwich it in between these two buttons on the inside. And the third, which is in my mind not the best option, but you can also mount it up under the collar. But I find that this is a pretty easy way to be able to see the microphone depending on how their movement is. And so what I'm going to do first is we're just going to mount it on the inside of the shirt right here. And so what I've got is I just have some top stick on the back of that casing, and I'll take that off. And what I'm going to do is decide whether I want to put it on this side or on this side of the shirt. And oftentimes the decision of which side do you put it on, if you're doing an interview, will come down to which side, if you have a second camera, are you going to be shooting. Because if I'm shooting from this direction, then I'm going to be looking right into this piece of the shirt. And so I probably don't want to put it there, and I'm going to want to put it here. But the other consideration is what'll happen is, as you can see the way that the shirt is falling right now, is this side is coming up from the bottom. And so it actually has a little bit more rigidity to it than this side that's on the top is going to flap open a little bit more. And so this side might reveal itself depending on how their motion is, where this is going to stay a little bit more perked up and a little bit more hidden. So in this setup, I'm going to go ahead and just put it on this side. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to not put it right at the edge, because again, if this shirt opens up a little bit, we're probably going to see it. But I'm going to tuck it in just a little bit deeper, where again, it's not going to be rubbing on their chest, but it's going to be concealed from the camera angle looking at the shirt. So once that's done, then I can just pull that cable down a little bit more. And I'm going to go ahead and just take a piece of this medical tape, and I'm just going to tape the wire right under the mic to the shirt. And so that way there's a little bit of strain relief, and if something gets pulled, that's going to keep the mic from being pulled out of the casing. So another way that you could mount this microphone onto a collared shirt is, instead of putting it up into the collar like we just did, you can actually put it in between these two buttons on the shirt here. And this might come in handy if your subject has a longer beard, or they have a lot of stubble on their face, because you can oftentimes get a lot of rubbing on the microphone there, especially with a beard. And so we can just unbutton this first button. All right, so I'm going to use this top stick, and I am just going to tape this right in between the buttons. So then when I button this shirt back up, that microphone is going to be hidden right here. And again, I'm going to want to take some of my medical tape, and I'm just going to strain relief that cable, maybe one button lower, and just tape that in there. And then we're good to go. What I will say is that when you're putting the microphone here, especially if there's going to be a lot of movement with the subject, you might get a little bit more clothing noise here, because that microphone is sandwiched between two pieces of clothing that could rub together. But for an interview, this is a great place to do it, especially if they have a longer beard, where you're not going to get that scratching at all, even if the beard is covering where the microphone is. In this setup, we're going to take a look at laving someone who's wearing a suit and tie. And you're probably going to come across this a lot if you're doing sit-down interviews. And it might seem like there's a lot of different options of where you could put this microphone, right? If I take my lav, we could put it up under the lapel of the shirt. We could hide it back behind the tie. We could even hide it in the lapel of the jacket. But actually in this situation, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hide the microphone right into the knot of the tie. And for me, this is a great place to put it. It's somewhere that there's not going to be a lot of movement. It's going to stay put. The fabric is generally pretty quiet, and it's just an all-around great place to stick that microphone. So for most of the miking setups, I'm using just this rubber casing that comes with my Sanken COS 11 mic. But in this instance, it's not going to be the best solution. And so in this instance, what I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to remove that rubber casing, and I'm going to replace it with this foam cover. And what we're going to do is, the first thing I'm going to do is loosen up the tie a little bit, so we've got a place to put it. And I'm going to run this foam cover with the microphone inside up into the knot. And we'll get that put here. And I'm just going to tighten this knot back up so we can get everything positioned. Like so. I can just tuck that right down in, and what this is going to do is it's going to create this little pocket in here for the microphone to sit. And again, because this tie generally isn't going to have a lot of movement, that's going to be a really nice clean place to put that microphone. And what we'll do is we'll then just run this cable around to the back of the knot. And I'm going to take some of this medical tape, and this is great stuff that you're going to have all the time when you're mounting lavs. And I'm going to take this tape and I'm just going to secure the cable to the back of the knot so that that doesn't move. Like so. Again, none of this we're ever going to see. And then I'm just going to take this cable and I'm going to run it up under the collar of the shirt. And we're going to run this all the way up under the collar into the back of the neck. And what we can do is we can take some more of this tape and we can secure that in a few places up under the collar so that we're not seeing any of this. And again, this is where it's good to walk your subject through what the process is going to be, because we're going to be poking and prodding all over them while we're doing this. So it's really good to walk them through this process, both before you do it as well as while you're going through it. And we'll just run this all the way up into the back of the collar, and then we're just going to drop it straight down the back of their shirt. We can then take our cable and we can go ahead and attach that right into our transmitter pack, and we can pop that right into the jacket pocket. And then what we're going to want to do is just tidy them up. And there we go. We've got our subject mic'd up with the microphone hidden in the knot of the tie, and they should be good to go. And the last method that we're going to look at is when someone's wearing a heavy winter coat. These things are notorious for clothing noise. I mean, they're just incredibly loud. They make all kinds of noise. If you start to bury the microphone inside, it gets all muffled and scratchy, and these things are really a pain to try to mic. So in this instance, even though we're talking about hiding the lavalier so that we can't see it, I'm going to try something where it is actually mounted to the outside, but we hope that it can be disguised enough where it's not going to draw attention to itself and you're probably not going to see it unless you're really looking for it. And so in that instance, what I'm going to do is I've removed the rubber housing off of my Sanken mic, and I'm going to use something from Rycote, and they're called overcovers. And these things are great. They're basically fuzzy wind protection that come in a variety of colors. There's, in this pack, there's a black, there's a gray, and there's a white, so you can find the one to match your clothing best. So in this instance, I'm gonna choose black. What you do is this is just a fuzzy windscreen, and the pack will come with these little covers. I'm just gonna put the microphone just onto that sticky like this. And then on top of that is where I mount the overcover. And so now the microphone is sandwiched right in there, and then I can just peel the 3M backing off of this, and now this is ready to stick onto our clothing. So if we look at this coat, you can see that we have this flap. We've got the collar that at the moment is open. Chances are that might be going up and down depending on what the weather is like and what the wind is like. So you want to keep that a consideration. And then you've got the hood. And so generally speaking, anywhere in kind of this range, which is right where you're going to want to put the microphone, is going to be creating the most noise, right? If the head's moving, if the chin is scraping into here, if the hood is moving, all of this stuff is going to create a lot of sound. So looking at this, I feel like the best place is going to be right here on the outside of this flap. Because again, I think with neck movement, that's going to be a lot quieter than anywhere up here, because this stuff is just going to be constantly moving. And so what I think I'm going to do is I'm just going to put it right here in the fold of this flap. I'm going to mount this microphone upside down so that the mic is pointing down, and I'm going to stick that right onto the outside of that collar. And so what that'll do is then I can take some of my medical tape, again for strain relief and cable management. And I'm going to then just take this cable and just run it right around the inside. And I can tape it into here. And at some point we might see it, but you know what? When you're dealing with a coat that's this loud, there's just certain compromises that you're gonna have to make. So I can do that, and then I can take the cable and I can run this down the inside of the coat. I'm gonna go ahead and just put one more piece of tape, just for good measure, on the cable on the inside of the coat, so that this corner and this turn are well protected from being pulled at. Something else that you could do in this situation is if you're seeing too much of this tape, the medical tape that's clear, you could take a piece of black gaff tape and stick there, and that might help blend it into the fabric a little bit more. The microphone is there, but it's very, very kind of well concealed, even though it's on the outside of the coat. I think this is going to create a much cleaner sound than if we tried to bury this microphone like some of the other techniques that we used with regular clothing. If you tried to bury that anywhere inside the coat, it's just going to be nothing but noise of rustling. And so this is probably going to be your best bet when you're dealing in this kind of situation. So we've covered some of the challenges that you might run into based on what kind of clothing someone's wearing when you're trying to loft them up. Obviously, there's an infinite number of things that you could come across, but I think that these techniques will get you through 99% of the situations. Well, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you found this video helpful. And if you did, please consider subscribing to my channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.